is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Ring Rees-Mogg. Put your calls to Jacob Rees-Mogg now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
It is LBC with Ring Rees-Mogg here on Monday, June the 24th at 6 minutes after 9. A little bit of a late start because Jeremy Hunt... I don't know what the collective noun for prominent Conservatives is. Murder is one perhaps as a possibility. I don't know whether Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's here to take your calls... Actually, he's far better wordsmith than me.
I was hoping for a murmuration.
Oh, I like that one, because let me just shamefully give your book, which you very kindly just said. The Victorians, 12 Titans Who Forged Britain. Jacob Rees-Mogg's new book, and so your word is going to be what for a collection of prominent...
A murmuration, as with starlings. I think it's how we chatter away.
Murmuration. It's been a while since we've seen each other. There's been some exciting developments. I know, of course, you appear on LBC regularly, and I have caught some of it, but I won't pretend I've caught all of it. Just sum up for the listeners who've not heard you on Fridays where you think the Conservative Party stands, the two contenders, and indeed Brexit as a whole.
OK, I think we've got two excellent contenders, but I'm backing Boris Johnson.
Yes.
I think he is very committed to leaving on the 31st of October and has been for a long time.
Mr Hunt's just said, sorry to talk again, Mr Hunt's just said he will leave.
Absolutely, but I think having a Remainer again would be a mistake, that we need somebody who campaigned for leave, who really believes in leave, who can carry leavers along with him when there may be difficult choices to make. And I think it's important to do that. And also, Boris has been clear that if the choice is not leaving or leaving without a deal, he will leave without a deal, whereas Jeremy's always hedged around on that a bit. And so I know he was much clearer this morning, and that's a good thing.
Very clear.
But
you still think he's Theresa May in trousers?
Well, I don't want to be rude about candidates, and I think the leadership campaign has shown how many good people there are at the top of the Tory party, highly capable people of differing views, from Rory, Stuart on one hand all the way through. So I don't want to be personally critical of Jeremy, but I think Boris is the right man. He has the charisma, the boldness to do it, but also look at his record as London Mayor. He was a very successful London Mayor who got things done. And Brexit has to be delivered, but there's also an awful lot else for a new Prime Minister to do.
So having said to me, and I'm grateful that you are in accord with me, that he would leave on October the 31st, you don't think that he necessarily would? I speak of Mr Hunt now.
Well,
because he wouldn't do a second referendum. I mean, unless he lied barefacedly to me, he wouldn't go for a second turn.
Lie is such a strong,
misled,
harsh word.
Maybe I misheard it.
Theresa May, in good faith, said that she would take us out on the 29th of March. She said it over 100 times. And she didn't. And why didn't she? Well, because in the end, she said, well, there isn't a majority in Parliament for leaving without a deal. If Mr Hunt were in the same position, what would he do? So I'm confident that Boris would simply say, the law is in place to leave. Parliament passed that, and a motion of Parliament can't override the law. I'm not convinced that Mr Hunt would do that, but you've just had him in and he's explained his position. But I think from what he said previously, I would have some doubts.
Let's get to the questions. That's what Rees-Mogg is all about. And it's Steve in Tunbridge Wells. You're through to Jacob Rees-Mogg. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning, Steve.
Post-Brexit, would Boris Johnson be a liability when we are rebuilding our reputation overseas?
Oh, no, very much the reverse. That Boris Johnson is very unusual for a British politician. He's actually already known overseas. When he goes abroad, people recognise him, which normally only happens to the foremost British Prime Ministers. It certainly doesn't happen to people who haven't held the highest office. And therefore he is able to promote Britain abroad in a way that others can't do. And delivering Brexit will be a great triumph for British foreign policy when it actually happens. So far it's been hopeless. It's made us weak and divided, and the government hasn't known where to go. That's been damaging to the reputation of Britain. Delivering it and being out will show us to be a strong country that can do things.
Why did you choose the word liability, Steve? It's Nick here, by the way.
Because
you see, it seems to colour the question a bit for me.
I see the rebuilding of our reputation as one of the prime functions of the new Prime Minister. And my view is, and from my extensive experience of working overseas, this is the reason for my question, I sense that Boris Johnson is more more of a liability to our reputation than perhaps helping it.
Final response.
Well, I simply disagree. I think that Boris connects with people outside the country. He's not popular with the Davos crowd, the sort of elite who think that they can run the world from an annual meeting. But that's not where we want to be. We want to be more responsive to democracy. And actually,
but we want investment from the Davos crowd, don't we, Jacob Rees-Mogg?
Well, investment comes if there are good deals to be done in the UK, and that's about having the right tax regime, and it's about having an open economy, and it's about ensuring that...
But we'd never bolt the door to the Davos.
Well, of course we wouldn't bolt the door to anybody, and we would definitely welcome investment, and we should have a more welcoming investment background in the UK, which is one of the things we can do outside the EU. We can make ourselves more competitive, and that's certainly something that I think Boris would be doing.
Steve, thank you. To Tim in Kennington. Tim, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning, Tim.
My question is, given that if Boris becomes Prime Minister, the likelihood of a general election increases, do you agree that Conservative associations should be allowed to deselect those MPs who won't adhere to the Brexit line?
Well, first of all, your question on a general election, is that more likely? I think you can argue this all ways round. The DUP have made it clear that if we don't leave on the 31st of October, a new government can't guarantee to have the confidence of the DUP. So it's not just the half dozen Tory MPs who are being talked about this morning who may not back a government that's planning to leave on the 31st of October. There are other factors. Nonetheless, with the opinion polls as they are, there are lots of people who don't want a general election. So it may be harder to get through Parliament than you suggest, Tim. In terms of Conservative associations, I'm slightly torn because I believe that Conservative associations are where authority within the Conservative Party lies, and I think that they should be reasonably free to decide who their candidates are. On the other hand, I think having a witch hunt of Conservative MPs would be divisive, not in the interests of the country at large, and not in the long-term interests of the Conservative Party, which needs to be a broad church. It needs to have people in it with differing views within a certain field. That if we were to say we are purely a Brexit party, I don't think that would maximise our vote or indeed the talent available to us. So I'm slightly sitting on the fence, Tim. I think
you are. I was just about to come up, but at least you've conceded that.
I do
I was
sometimes.
Say you're arguing against yourself.
I do sometimes, because I think authority is legitimately with associations, and if they have concerns with MPs, they are entitled to raise them. Okay. But I don't think they would be wise to have a witch hunt of pro-European MPs.
Quite rare, Mr. Rees-Mogg sitting on a fence. Tim, are you on a fence with him, or do you rather decided either way?
Well, my concern is that we'll just be back to square one. You'll have the likes of Philip Lee, Richard Harrington on the backbenches, making life hell for be it Jeremy Hunt or Boris Johnson. So, I think we need to draw a line under this once and for all. And if the people who won't adhere to Boris's Brexit line, it's only right if they choose to kind of go to another party like Anna Soubry did and Heidi Allen, but I think it'd be so much for the better just to get it done now.
But Tim, there is one very important point you make, and that is that in relation to those who have already left, if a Member of Parliament voted against the government in a vote of confidence, that person would be leaving the Conservative Party and would not be able to stand at the next election. That is the automatic withdrawal of the whip, and a new candidate would be selected.
Interesting point, Tim. I must move on. Thank you. We go to Switzerland, to Bern, and Richard for the next caller. Richard, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
I'd like to ask you, Jacob, do you think if we keep pushing Boris on answering this kind of scrutiny about what happened on Friday night, I think it sets a dangerous precedent for MPs to come under that kind of scrutiny again?
Well, Richard, I thank you for your question, because I think it's absolutely dreadful. I really do. I think the idea that snooping neighbours are recording what is going on for political advantage, and then class war protesters are coming to politicians' front doors, which happened to me as well.
It did. Your children and nanny, as I understand.
Is not a good place for politics to be. I think the politicians should feel safe and unmolested in their own homes. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to ask for. I think peaceful protest is absolutely right and part of a free society. But the aggression of the hard left is really appalling and not how British politics has normally been carried out. And snoopers are always unattractive. Curtain twitchers, sort of Corbynista curtain twitchers, are not attractive.
They were not caring neighbours then, they were snooping neighbours, Mr. Rees-Mogg.
Oh, yes, and
You hear a woman shout.
Who reaches first of all for their mobile telephone to record it and then sends it off to the Guardian? That's a snooper. And the Guardian, the pious Guardian, the Guardian that was obsessed by phone hacking, led a campaign, the moral crusade. They're hypocritical lefties, and we should know that. It's do as I say, not as I do. And the Guardian should be ashamed of the way it's behaved in dealing with this sort of person.
Your father was a distinguished editor of The Times. Were you the editor of The Guardian, which I know really is out on planet Zog, but you would have just said absolutely no way and nixed and knocked it back straight away.
My father, as editor of The Times, received a surreptitious recording of police corruption, and he used that because that is something that was clearly in the national interest. And much more cumbersome to record in those days. This is in the early 1970s, and it is now.
Yes.
But I think for newspapers to think neighbours recording through the wall, when you have this vision of them putting a glass next to the wall with their mobile, how long have they been doing that? Were they doing it day in, day out, just in case they might catch a snippet of conversation that they could pass on to a newspaper? And who knows how to get in touch with newspapers as quickly as this? It's all very unsavoury.
And to those who say, lastly, we will move on from this, but to those who say, if you put yourself up to be the Prime Minister, your character, although it interests the public, is also in the public interest, because there is a distinction. I could tell you all sorts of things that interest the public that aren't in the public interest. How would you respond to that, Mr. Rees?
I think people who are in the public eye have to accept a great deal. It's part of being in public life, and that's perfectly reasonable, that when you're in a public space, what you do and what you say is public, and you can't complain. I was at Lord's yesterday, and lots of nice people come up to me and say hello, and they say, do I mind talking about Brexit? If I'm in a public space and people want to come up to me and talk about Brexit, that's fine, because I've entered this world. When people are privately in their own home with the door closed, is that really something where neighbours should be whisking out their iPhones when a discussion was going on in the home? I think that's beyond the level.
And shouldn't he lastly have just knocked it back with a statement on Saturday?
No, I think he's absolutely right. Once you start saying, I'm going to answer these questions, then every question is opened up.
Well, how many times does he have spill red wine over his sofa and have an altercation with his girl?
Quite. Yeah, that's what you want to know now. And what I say to journalists who ask those sorts of questions is, when did they last have an altercation?
Oh.
When did they last have a full and frank exchange of views in the marital home? So I think this is the right answer from Boris. He simply shouldn't go down the route of discussing his private affairs, but we really should raise questions over these curtain-twitching Corbynistas.
Richard, before we move on, is it big news in Switzerland?
Yeah, of course it is. It is all over the world, I think. I mean, even on local radio, we're hearing Boris's voice being played on it. Just a quick follow-up question on that. A little bit on the side note there, Jacob. Just a yes or no, are you looking for a position in Boris's cabinet?
Well, I'm not looking for anything, but I will do anything I can to support Boris. He has my full and unequivocal support as the best person to lead the country, and if I can do anything to help him, I'll do it. But if he doesn't think I can, that'd be a matter for him.
Brilliant, looking forward to it. Cheers.
Thank you.
Richard, thank you. I don't know if I dare ask this. Have there ever been altercations in the Rees-Mogg house between you and the saintly Mrs. Rees-Mogg?
The saintly Mrs. Rees-Mogg is too saintly. I think that one doesn't always agree on everything.
Yes. All plates are intact.
Oh, all plates are intact.
I've had plates thrown at me.
Have you?
Yeah, in my previous marriage I had a plate and 6 eggs. If they'd sent some flour, we could have made an omelette.
Nothing has ever been thrown at me.
James is in Maidenhead. You're on the radio. James, go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hello, sir.
Morning.
One of our greatest PMs, Margaret Thatcher, originally said that she thought it was totally inappropriate to have a referendum about such a complex issue, an irrevocable issue, as to whether or not to leave the EU. It was the EEC then. In 2011, you said it would make more sense to have the second referendum after the renegotiation is over. So, given that only about 1.3 million more voted to leave, that is about...
Only 1.3 million? The tiny number of 1.3 million? James, come on, this is propaganda.
voted to leave, Mr. Rees-Mogg. That's the difference between 16.1 and 17.4.
James, I mean, I'll just interject before. James, when the England female football team win the World Cup by 1-0, are we going to say they didn't really win it?
I said it's 2.9% of the electorate.
Back to your question to Rees-Mogg.
Why has Mr. Rees-Mogg changed his mind?
Oh, I haven't. And if you bothered listening to this programme before, we've discussed it on many occasions.
You are still on the line. I want to pass to Rees-Mogg. I do have to say that we have actually addressed this before. So, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I'll be brief, because this is the dishonest propaganda of the referendum campaign, and they put it up as a billboard saying I tweeted something before I was even on Twitter. So, James, I'm afraid you're simply wrong on this. What I was saying was that David Cameron should have got a mandate referendum before he went to renegotiate, to say, we want to renegotiate. And then he could have had a referendum on his renegotiation. Mr. Cameron decided not to have the mandate referendum, but to put it to one referendum, which was decisive. So if you listen to what I said in 2011, that was the point. That isn't what happened. It's very straightforward.
Quick response.
Can I speak?
Yeah, in a sentence. But if you're going to challenge that, because it is actually factual, but go ahead, James. Of course you're allowed to respond. Of course.
I've simply got a video of Mr. Rees-Mogg saying it, and strange enough, the original video of him saying has now been taken down.
Right.
No, it hasn't, because it's on the parliamentary website. You're talking through your hat, James. I'm so sorry.
James, shall we move on? I'm grateful for your input, thank you. Gavin in Barnsley. Gavin, we move to other matters. You're on the radio, go ahead.
Morning, Jacob.
Hello, morning.
Jacob, if Jeremy Hunt somehow wins the leadership and becomes a Prime Minister, do you think the Tory party is finished?
No, I don't, Gavin. I think that there is a realistic prospect of the Conservative Party as long as we leave on the 31st of October. I think that is the key. I think Mr. Hunt is a formidably able man. He's a highly intelligent man and was a very good Secretary of State for Health. But if the Tories don't leave or don't get us out on the 31st of October, then there will be no Tory party left to lead. That's the issue that we are facing.
It's as grave as that.
Boris put it very well. He said, kick the can and you kick the bucket. And I'm afraid I think that's right. You see that 67% of our vote, according to Lord Ashcroft's poll, went to the Brexit party at the European elections. We've got to get those voters back, and the only way we do that is by leaving. Could Jeremy Hunt do that? He could. I think it's more likely Boris would do that. That's why I'm backing him.
Quick response from you, Gavin.
Yeah, well, I sort of agree with Jacob. I think Jacob's been very loyal to his party, which is admirable. I believe if Jeremy Hunt does win, he may be intelligent. He may. I question about the NHS, but my point is I think they will be finished because it is Mrs May, Mark II. We need a Brexiteer leading our country through and getting out of the EU, and I only have faith in a Brexiteer, not someone that campaign for Remain. Right. And equally on the hustings on Saturday, he sort of was reading back, we might have to delay it, like he has said on many times. So personally, if we get Hunt, the reality is the people certainly up the north that have left Labour will certainly not go to the Tories or they'll just go to a new party. That is.
I think we'd know where they'd go, wouldn't they? They'd go to the Brexit party, Jacob.
Gavin, I think you make a really fair point. I agree with you entirely that we need a leaver and somebody who really believes in it to get us out. See, there are two views of Brexit, and even Remainers who accept the result still view it as a problem to be managed, whereas Leavers think it is a golden opportunity of this country, and that is a different mental approach to government. Boris is very positive about the opportunities rather than the very defensive approach Mrs May always took. So, Gavin, I think you make a very fair point, but I think if we left with Jeremy Hunt on the 31st of October, the Tory party could recover from that.
Walter, stay on the line. You will be the next caller. A couple of emails, texts and tweet questions that are coming in. This one comes from Kenneth in Dartford. What was the particular appeal about Rory Stuart's campaign?
Rory's campaign was just different and interesting. It was slightly quixotic, but he wasn't a normal politician in how he approached it. He was raising questions, he was very thoughtful, he had a lot of answers that I don't happen to agree with. But I think to see a politician being so unspun, so straightforward, was very attractive.
Tess in Hackney, what would or should happen to any Conservative MP who abstained in a future vote of confidence against the government if a no-deal Brexit was threatened?
I think if you don't support the government in a vote of confidence, the whip is, if you vote against, it's automatically withdrawn.
If you abstain,
and it led to the fall of the government in a general election and the risk of Jeremy Corbyn, I think you would deserve to lose the whip. You can't abstain over the future of a Conservative government. You have to back the government in those circumstances.
And lastly, before we come to you, Walter, Rachel in Bexley has been reading back numbers, I think, of the Daily Telegraph and quotes a Boris Johnson column from 2007 in which he talked about Gordon Brown taking over the job from Tony Blair without winning elections, calling it, quotes, a gigantic fraud. I don't have the clipping to hand, but isn't that surely the same case with Boris Johnson, she says?
Rachel, it's a very interesting debating point, but no, because of
hang on, if it was
because of the 2011 Fixed Term Parliament Act, we changed our constitution in 2011. So what Boris said in 2007 is true, and actually I think that our constitution was evolving in that way. And then we passed the Fixed Term Parliament Act to do precisely the reverse. So there's been a significant constitutional change, which means there isn't that option for a new Prime Minister anymore, that you have to get two-thirds majority in Parliament for a dissolution, rather than simply, when Gordon Brown became Prime Minister, saying to the Queen, we should have a dissolution and a new general election.
Are you arguing in favour then of an early election, as Theresa May did with the so-called snap election that took about, 16 years, it felt like?
Yeah, that's right. No, I'm not. I didn't like the constitutional change. I thought it was a mistake.
You voted against it?
I voted against it consistently. Yes, a really bad constitutional change. But that is now the law, and I think we're stuck with that. Would I like to see the Fixed Term Parliament Act repealed? Yes. And do I think that a constitutional evolution where a new Prime Minister did routinely face an election would be a good thing? Yes, but that's not where the Constitution has gone, and indeed it's developed in precisely the opposite direction.
Let's get some more questions in. Walter in Blackpool, thank you for hanging on the line. So your question of Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Well, good morning. If we did reach the 31st of October without a deal, how could you justify the detrimental effects of a no-deal Brexit, particularly on our exporting businesses?
Well,
again, this is a question that's been put before, but Walter, you deserve the benefit of hearing the summing up from Mr. Rees-Mogg again.
Thank you, Walter. It is an important question. That leaving on WTO terms is a perfectly routine way of trading with the rest of the world. Average tariffs are low, they're under 4%, less than you get from a devaluation in the pound that we've already had since 2016. And it means that we save £39 billion, that we are out immediately, we are able to set our own tariff rates for the rest of the world, we're not bound in by any future EU obligations. This is a really exciting opportunity. There are many positives to come out of leaving without a deal. Now, I accept, Walter, that there may be some specific areas for whom life is difficult. Sheep farmers are a case in point where there are high tariffs. And the government will have to have policies to look after people who are specifically hurt by leaving without a deal, but there's the £39 billion cushion to help them.
Thanks for that. We are out of time, save for one final question from me, although we will see each other again soon. My listeners are going to, and of course they'll have the benefit of listening to you on Fridays, but we'll be seeing a lot of these two men fight it out. Ultimately, what do you think the victor, what will it turn on, the election of the leader of the Conservative Party?
I think ultimately it's, do you think this man can win a general election and defeat Jeremy Corbyn and get us out of the European Union? And I think Boris Johnson has shown before he can win in London, which is a Labour city. He's clear on Brexit, and he has this most extraordinary charisma that is given to very, very few politicians. People genuinely stop their cars to get out and shake hands with Boris. Jeremy Hunt is a formidably able man, but people don't stop their cars to shake hands with him. And that's a very powerful campaigning piece of good fortune, actually.
And would you serve, you said you'd serve if you were so-called under Boris Johnson. Would you serve if so-called under Jeremy Hunt?
Well, I wouldn't put money on being asked to, but I will support any Conservative leader, and always would have done through this process. I think it's really important that the Conservative Party unites to deliver Brexit, and I would have supported Rory Stuart had he got elected.
That was Ring Rees-Mogg with Jacob Rees-Mogg, Conservative MP, Chairman of the ERG. You're back on Friday, I'm sure, on your own show.
Indeed, yes.
Fantastic to know you'll be in situ then. Meanwhile, we're off for the latest news here on LBC.
Jeremy Hunt has told LBC he stands by his description of his rival Boris Johnson as a coward for evading public scrutiny in the Tory leadership.